Okay, welcome everybody. I think we'll make a start. Thank you for finding the time to join us today. My name's Jake Mullender. I head up the customer account management team at RM. In the team, we have relationships with over 1,300 of our RM services customers, and it's really, really great to see many of our customers attending today, as you have done at various different locations over the 20 years that we've been running the RM seminars around the country. So we welcome you, and also a warm welcome to any other attendees that are new to RM, new to these events. We hope that you'll find the session useful today, and you'll find it engaging and interesting. So I think it's been said many times in recent weeks that we are experiencing very different ways of working currently. These are unprecedented times. I've heard that a few times as well in recent weeks. Most of us are working from home or from other remote locations. As you know better than we do, schools are closed at the moment. And that really, for RM, meant that we were faced with a decision around the seminars for the April round, which was, should we actually go ahead with the seminars at all, or should we postpone till the autumn? And we decided to go ahead for two really good reasons. The first one is that our customers at the moment really do need our help and support, and we're hearing that loud and clear. Lots and lots of conversations and inquiries about customers about remote technologies. And lots of schools looking for advice on how to get the best out of those. So that was the first reason. The second one is that many of you will be aware that the DfE announced last week a funded initiative to support schools in working with partners like RM to adopt Google or Microsoft technologies to enable more widespread remote learning. And I think there's a third reason as well, and that is that this kind of technology is new for the RM seminars, and if this goes
Patrick. I'm educational consultant for RM, and I'm going to be leading you through the main presentation this afternoon.
Please check that.
So hopefully you should be seeing my screen now, and I'm hoping you can all see my screen. So yeah, my name is David Fitzpatrick. I'm a senior educational consultant for RM. I was a teacher for 10 years, taught maths and science. And now I work exclusively with schools, helping them use technology to kind of enhance learning and teaching. Obviously, in the new world we're living in, there has been this push towards distance learning, and that's what this presentation is going to focus on this afternoon. Now, the good news for you is that you have to write nothing down. This presentation will be shared with you. Every single slide I show you has a link, which will be to some instructions or some guides, or to a video tutorial that I've made for you earlier. So hopefully you can just watch this, hopefully you can get something out of this, and then later on you can just refer back as necessary. So we're looking at supporting distance learning and remote working with G Suite for Education. As Jake just alluded to, the government has set up an initiative which will allow all schools that aren't at the moment having gone to the cloud to start that journey. It's £2,000 available for secondary school and £1,000 for primary school. There's some guidance and information about that here. So if your schools or any schools you work with are at the moment not with Google or with Office 365, they can apply for this funding. And if you click the link at the bottom, that's how you can get RM to help you with this, set you up, and get you going, or get those schools going on their journey to the cloud. So, as we are all acutely aware, the coronavirus has completely changed the way that we are having to teach and students are having to learn. And this webinar is specifically focusing on G Suite for Education. Just some interesting statistics for you. 2 million new users every day into Google. Google Meet has increased 25-fold in March alone. 2 billion minutes of videos was recorded in March as well. and Google Classroom has doubled to 100 million since the virus. So obviously a huge increase in the way that Google is being used. We're advising not to be using random video conferencing like Zoom, and you should stick to one of the two main players because of the security and the tracking and the student safeguarding. I'm sure a lot of you have been looking on the internet for resources to help you. We have tried to help you navigate all of those resources. So if you now go to rm.com and you click on the link Distance Learning Advice for Schools, you will see a whole raft of information and resources either that we have made for you or linking directly to the resources that have been provided by Google. So this should be a really good first place for you to go to get the essential resources that you need. So what am I covering today? Well, first of all, I'm going to look at the key tools that Google has to support distance learning. I'm then going to focus on safeguarding, particularly with video lessons and with using Google Meet. There's some key changes that Google have made really quickly. They've reacted so amazingly quickly to this, and I'm going to go through some of these with you today. I'm going to talk about how you can record Google Meets so you can have them as lessons to share with your colleagues and then to share with your students. Going to talk a little bit about the difference between Google Meet and Google Stream. And again, I'll talk about that as we go through the session today. Something else that we're going to look at is the ability within Google to use something called Google Chat to create a virtual meeting space. So obviously, departments or schools aren't able to meet face-to-face, and Google have a tool for that, which many of you probably haven't seen before, haven't really explored, and we're going to look at that today as well. I'm going to go through some of the key Google administration that you need to do to ensure safeguarding, and in about half an hour, when I've finished all this, there's going to be a Q&A, and me and my colleague Michael Oates will be able to field, or hopefully field, as many questions as we can from you. The first thing to say is that what this presentation today isn't going to be is another session on Google Classroom. Google Classroom has been done 1,000 times. All schools that have Google are probably already familiar with this. So what I specifically wanted to do was to feeding on some of the experiences and the impact of what some of my schools are doing to feed that to you today. Having said that, this presentation does contain all sorts of links and resources to all of the various Google tools, if that's what you need. But I'm hoping to try something slightly different today that maybe, hopefully, you haven't seen. So first of all, these are the primary tools that Google have to support distance learning. So Google Classroom should be the primary tool you use for teacher-student workflow. For those of you who are using it, you will know that it is phenomenally powerful. You can see here there's a link here for help if this is what you want from today, but this is not where I'm going to today. It's going to be something slightly different. Of course, there's Google Drive just to share and collaborate with your teachers, with your colleagues and with your students, and that's obviously a key tool that you need to understand. There's the video conferencing, Google Meet or Google Stream. Again, we're going to talk about these today. Google Sites is a website to host lesson information, videos, worksheets. Obviously, it could be an intranet type of Google site, just available internally to the school domain, or it could be public-facing. You have the ability to create a Google form to ask questions for students or to do quizzes that get marked automatically. And something perhaps you haven't seen at the bottom is Google Jamboard, which is an interactive whiteboard tool. So it's you can share and collaborate on a whiteboard. Google Jamboard is available through the browser, but it is actually better as an app on your phone or on a tablet. But it is available as a web-based app on your computers. So these are all of the tools that Google have, or most of the tools that you should be focusing on to support learning and teaching, distance learning and teaching. But what I specifically want to focus on today is student safeguarding. So this is really important. And when back in March, we started to work with Google Meet with some of my schools, we found some real issues with student safeguarding. And now these have been resolved. And I'm going to talk you through those now. So they've made some key changes to Google Meet. and I'm just going to go through these. The first of these is that they have, over this term, given all schools access to the enterprise version of Google Meet, which basically means that you can record your Google Meets and that you have something called a Google Stream, which is a one-way broadcast of a Google Meet. The next thing they've done is they've now said that only the meeting organizer, in other words, the teacher, can remove a participant from a meeting. For those of you who started experimenting with this a few weeks ago, you will have noticed that students were at will able to either remove each other or in fact their teacher from their own Google Meet, which of course in the context of a school is a disaster. That now has been resolved. And also what Google have done is they've stopped any student being in a meeting without their teacher. And again, I'm going to go through this with you in a couple of minutes. And also what Google have done is they've said that only the meeting organizer, in other words, the teacher, can allow an external participant, in other words, a non-domain user, into a Google Meet. Again, what was happening a month ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, is that if the address for a meeting was given out, anybody could join that meeting, another student could let them in, and that was causing some real disruption in some of my schools. That has now been stopped, providing you look at and follow the instructions I'm about to go through with you. So as I said before, there's a video tutorial here. So when you get these slides, you can literally click on this and everything I'm saying will be explained to you. I'm just going to show you this now. So this is about safeguarding using Google Meet. So here I am as a teacher. I'm going to click on the 9 squares, the mosaic, and I'm going to click onto Google Meet. I'm going to click onto join or start a meeting. I'm not going to add a nickname. I'm going to click into continue. Just for this video, I'm going to switch off my camera and microphone, and I'm going to click onto join now. And now as a teacher, I am in this meeting, and it gives me the address of that meeting, which I can share with my students. That could be through a Google Calendar, it could be via your school website, it could be via Google Classroom. Just to let you know, by the way, if you click on the bottom left of meeting details, that's also where you could get the link to the meeting. I'm actually going to come out of that meeting now. But what I want you to understand is, as a student, if I go to exactly the same URL, I can now come into this meeting and I'm in here on my own without my teacher. And other students could be doing exactly the same thing. And therefore, as a safeguarding issue, this could be a real problem for the school. So how do we stop that? This is what we need to do. As a teacher, when you click on the 9 squares and you go to Google Meet and click onto join or start meeting, you must give the meeting a nickname. That's really important. If you give the meeting a nickname, again, I'm just going to switch off the camera and microphone and click onto join now. Again, I have the URL to give my students, but because the meeting has a nickname, if I now as the teacher come out of this meeting again, go back to my students, and now again try and join the meeting with the same URL, you can see that I can't. So you need to give a meeting a nickname, and then students cannot join without you. In the same way, if I just come out of this here, go back to my teacher screen, I'm going to rejoin that meeting. And now I am in that meeting. So when I go through to the students page and I join the same meeting, it will let me in because the teacher's already there. So now you can see on the top left, the 2 people in the meeting now. But as the teacher, I can now, at will, go to my participants, and at the end of a lesson I say, could you please leave my lesson? For those students that don't, you can simply click on them and remove them by clicking on this kind of no entry sign against that student's name. That student now comes out of your meeting. So now when I finish that meeting, the student can no longer come back into it because it had a nickname. So what I'm saying to you is, if a meeting has a nickname, students can't enter it without you. And really critically, when a teacher leaves the meeting, they have to make sure all the participants, all the students have left, and then they can be rest assured that no student can then be in the meeting without them. So that's the first thing I wanted to say about safeguarding in Google Meet. The next thing Google have done is they have integrated Google Meet into Google Classroom, which is fantastic. So this, again, is a new thing just in the last week or so. So now when you go to a Google Classroom and you click on the cog for settings, you can generate a Meet link and make this visible to students within their Google Classroom. So again, we can have this virtual meeting experience, but this will automatically be configured so students can only join the meeting if the teacher is already there. And again, I'm just very quickly going to show that to you. So if I go back to my drive, click on the 9 squares and go to my classroom. If I now create a new class, which I'm just going to call Google Meet in Classroom, create, sometimes just take 10 or 20 seconds for this meeting, for this new classroom to be created. But once this classroom has been created, what I can do now for the first time is introduce a Google Meet link into this classroom. I'm hoping this is very quickly going to go into my classroom. I may have to go back to one I made earlier. Here we go. So you can see that's my classroom as a teacher. I would get my students to join in the normal way. But now if I click on the settings, the cog on the top right, I scroll down, you can see I can now generate a Meet link here. And you can see here the button is toggled to make become visible to students. And now if a student joins that classroom, when they go to their classroom, on the top, they will now see the Meet link here, which again is a really, really key change that Google have made into Classroom, which probably many of you weren't aware of. Now, some of your teachers may be hesitant or reluctant to do a live Google Meet. They may be not so confident with the technology, or they might want to create a single lesson that can be shared across their department and used multiple times. So what Google have allowed you to do, again, because they've upgraded schools to the enterprise version of Google Meet just for the time being, is they've allowed you to record a Google Meet. So again, I've created a video tutorial for you here, so you can look at this at your leisure after this seminar. So you can record a Meet. That file is automatically saved to your Google Drive, depending on how long the Meet was. It may take a few minutes. And then the file can obviously be shared with students in exactly the same way you would share an ordinary Google Doc. So how do we record a lesson? Again, incredibly straightforward. I go back to, I'm going to rejoin my last meeting. No, I'm not. I'm going to go back to Google Meet, join or start a meeting, give it a nickname, as we said, to ensure there's safeguarding within your Google Meet. Click on to join now. And once you're in that meeting, if you look on the bottom right now, the 3 dots, which hopefully you can see here, I can click on the 3 dots and I have the option to record my meeting. When I click onto this button here, it asks you to get consent from all the participants. And then when you accept that, if you look now to the top left, you can see it's beginning to configure itself ready to record. In a few seconds, that goes red. Everybody in the meeting would see, by the way, that that's gone red, so everyone knows that meeting is being recorded. And when you finished the recording and you wanted to finish, again, you go down to the 3 dots and you click on to stop recording. And it said the recording will be saved into your Google Drive. So I'm going to click on to stop recording. So how do I now find those recordings? Well, if you go back to your Google Drive, you will find a folder that is now created, so it might take a few minutes, called Meet Recordings. You double click into here and you will see all of the Meet recordings that you have made. And of course, what you might want to do here is right-click and rename them, and then share them with the students, or in fact with your colleagues if it's kind of a shared lesson. So it would need to be shared, and then it could be put into Google Classroom or put into a shared area that students access, or however you're sharing your resources with your students. That is how you record a Google Meet. There are some key admin changes that you need to make in order to facilitate this. And again, I'm going to go through those at the end of this session. Just want to speak to you now a couple of minutes about the difference between Google Meet, which is what I've just been showing you, and Google Stream. So again, for some of your colleagues that are a bit reticent or maybe have lower levels of ICT literacy, they may be very nervous about having an interactive, collaborative meeting session where students are talking or whether they're asking and posting questions. So they may feel much more comfortable with a broadcast, with a real-time broadcast of what they're saying and what they're doing, but without the interactivity. So again, I've made a video tutorial for you, so you can look at this after the session. But as you've seen, Google Meet is a very interactive system. You can have audience participation, there's live chat, so therefore it's much more akin to a normal lesson. But in the same way, therefore, students can disrupt that lesson. They've been silly, maybe making silly comments, and that may bring the lesson to disrepute. So Google Stream is a tool that you may want to use. It has to be switched on in the admin console, and it's only available via Google Calendar. So it's not intuitive, but I am going to talk about this with you now. As I've said here, it's a broadcast, it's a live, one-way meeting, but there's no interactivity, and that means there's no level of disruption. Of course, the lack of interaction may mean students aren't as engaged, so from that criteria, it may not be perfect, but it may be better than teachers being reluctant to do anything at all. So again, I'm going to teach you how to do this now. So I've gone back to my Google Drive. I click onto the 9 squares, and I'm now going to go to my calendar. I understand that's not terribly intuitive, but that's what you need to do. Into my calendar, I'm now making a meeting. It doesn't have to be a meeting at the right time, just has to be a Google meeting at some point somewhere in your calendar. So I'm going to call my meeting Google Stream. And you can see here, I can add a Meet video conference, and I'm going to add a Google Meet. But now, if I go to this drop down at the end of the Google Meet, you can see I have the option to add a live stream, which I'm going to do. So what you need to understand now is the Google Meet URL is completely different to the live stream URL, which means that those teachers or those students that you want to be participating in the lesson, that you want to be interactive and collaborative, you would give them this link. But those students that you just wanted to watch it, in effect like watching broadcast television, is you would give them this link instead. Just to be clear, the meeting doesn't have to happen at this time. It just has to be the URL that you give students, and you have to click onto this URL to be the one that's hosting the meeting and collaborating. Once you've gone into that meeting, you do have to choose the option to start the stream. I'm not going to do that now, but again, if you click on my video tutorial here, it will talk you through that. Again, I can't hear anybody, I can't see any of your faces, so I'm hoping that you're following this, finding this useful and finding it interesting. The next thing I want to talk about is creating a virtual meeting space. So this now is coming kind of away from the student distance learning, but how teachers and schools can collaborate and share more effectively. Now, obviously you've got Drive and obviously you've got Gmail or email if you're not using Gmail, but you may want another way to kind of share and collaborate within a single space. And for that, Google have created something called Google Chat. Again, I created a video tutorial for you here, so if you're interested in this, you can just watch this video. It will tell you everything that I'm telling you now. It's similar to Microsoft Teams, for those of you who know Microsoft. It is ostensibly a text-based meeting space. So it's not really designed for anything but text. When you have a conversation within a Google chat, it's separated into threads, topics, if you like, and you can add files into a thread. It's important to understand that when you add a file into a thread, the other people within the Google team are comment only. You can't elevate those permissions. I'm going to talk about that now. So let me show you how Google Chat works. So again, I'm going back to my Google Drive. I'm clicking onto my 9 squares and I'm going here to Google Chat, which looks like this. On the top left, I'm going to go to find people, rooms, and bots. I know that's not intuitive, but this is how you create a room. A room is each kind of space that you want to create. So I'm going to click onto here and I'm going to create a room. By the way, when it talks about bots, for example, are some artificial intelligence tools that you could put into your room that could, for example, schedule a meeting with everybody in that room. They know, they can look at everybody's diaries and see where there's a space. But we're just going to here to create a room, and I'm going to call it Science Web-Based Resources. I'm going to click on to create. Sometimes, inexplicably, when you click on create, it just pauses on this screen. So the room has been created, but it just kind of freezes on this screen, which it's brilliantly demonstrating for me now. But if you just click on the cross on the top left, you can see that room has been created. So now I'm going to click into that room and I'm going to add a people, or add my team, my colleagues, my department into this. So I'm going to add my colleague John Smith, and I'm going to send him a meeting request. So now he would have got an email and he now can join this room, join this space. And now I'm going to add a new thread. So this is a new conversation. So I'm going to say here, hi John, I am making a list of websites to support our science key stage 4 learning. Can you add any links, please? So there is the start of my thread. And you can see I have the option here to add a file from my drive. So I'm going to click onto Google Drive. And I'm now going to add a file that I've created. And I'm going to click on to send. So now I'm having a conversation with my colleague John, and I have put into my Google thread that file from Google Drive. Something that's really, oh, John is saying good afternoon to me, which is really nice of him. Obviously, he's listening to what I'm doing, so thanks. Now, what you need to understand here is the file that has gone here has had comments given to everybody in the room. So anybody in the room is comment to this file. But in this instance, I don't want John to be comment, I want him to be edit. So I am now going to click onto the file. I'm going to click onto share on the top right. I'm going to click onto shared with 2 groups, and you can see here that it is shared with this group. That is the group that this Google Chat has created. So all I need to do now is elevate to edit, click onto save changes. And now, with a bit of luck, if that works, now I'm having a slight technical problem because it's not gone through. But with a bit of luck, my colleague John is now going back into that document and he is adding something to it. Let me try that again. There we go. So hopefully now my colleague John is now going into the document. He's making his change, and hopefully he might communicate with me in a minute to let me know he's done that. We shall find out shortly. As requested, thank you. So he's now done that. So now if I go back to the document, because I've given him edit now, when I scroll down here, you can see now that very helpfully, he's added Khan Academy in for me to go into my document. So Google Chat is a virtual meeting space. It is ostensibly text-based. You can add files from Drive. Everybody in the room gets comments, but obviously you can elevate their access. And just finally, if you wanted to, if you knew that John was in that room at the same time as you and you wanted to have a face-to-face chat with him, you could just click on the Google Meet icon here. Sorry. And now there would be a Meet icon, both of you, and you could join that meeting in real time. So that is something called Google Chat. Going back now to some of the key admin settings that you need to make in Google. This is particularly important for Google Meet because you want students to be able to join your meetings, but I think for the vast majority of schools you don't want students to be able to start their own meetings, nor do you want students to be able to record meetings that are going on. Obviously your school may have different policies to that and may think that's not correct, but this is my understanding of how most schools would want to set up the admin settings for Google Meet. So again, because I wanted everything to be self-contained in this presentation, what you need to do is you need to get your Google administrator, your super admin, to go to the admin console within Google, to go to the apps, to go to G Suite, to go to Google Hangouts, and then click onto Meet Settings, as illustrated here. And once you do that, what I've done in the presentation here is I've just highlighted the difference in settings I think you need to make for the organisational unit for staff compared to the organisational unit for students. So you can see here on the staff side, student recordings are on, the stream is on, video calling is on. And on the student side, those things are all switched off. So just to be clear, Google Meet is switched on for the entire establishment, but for the organisational unit student, these things are switched off, and the organisational unit for staff, these are switched on. So what have we done today in that short half an hour run through? We looked at some of the key tools to explore, to exploit the potential of Google for distance learning. I know I've not gone through them all today. I can't possibly do that in the time. But again, I have told you what they are and provided you help and support documents to them. I've looked at the safeguarding within Google Meet, how to stop students joining a Google meeting without you, how to make sure they've left the meeting before you, and also the changes that Google have made to maximise safeguarding. We've talked about how to record a Google Meet, so you could share that file with your colleagues, share it with your students so they can view a lesson anytime, just like you'll be able to watch this seminar in your own time. We've talked the difference between Google Meet and Google Stream, Google Meet being a very interactive, collaborative experience with live chat, as opposed to Google Stream, which is a one-way broadcast, just like watching the television. We've talked about Google Chat, which is a virtual meeting space, like a meeting room. It could be for just a department, it could be for a pastoral team, it could be for a whole school, and conversations go into threads, and it just may be a better way for departments or for schools to communicate with each other rather than just using traditional email. And the last thing I've done is I've gone through a bit of Google administration, specifically looking at Google Meet to make sure that you, again, maximize safeguarding for your students. I hope that was useful, and now we're going to open up to Q&A, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Jake, are you still with us? Possibly not. Right. Jake, whether you can talk or not, would it be possible to fill out some of the questions? And thank you. And Michael Oakes, my colleagues, also on the call. Michael, is your microphone on? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Good. Yeah, so I'm Michael Oakes. I'm one of the product managers at RM. I have been working at RM for nearly 20 years, and probably the last 4 years I worked for Google directly for RM for a year. So for the last 4 years I've been working quite closely with Google. on how to implement their tenancies and how to get the most out of their platform.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So we've got some questions here. Okay, so the only things that I've shown you today, which are part of the enterprise version, is the ability to record a Google Meet and the ability to use Google Stream. Everything else is standard G Suite for Education. So 99% of what I've shown you today will be exactly the same. For those schools that do want to buy the enterprise version, then obviously it does unlock this capability permanently, and also for information, it gives much more ways to track how Google is being used within your institution. And there is a price for that. I'm going to leave that one to you, Michael.
If the host computer malfunctioned,
I think you would lose it.
yeah, I'm guessing the meeting would close down. I don't know whether it holds the session open and whether you'd be able to rejoin. In actual fact, I think it would, because it's web-based, it would stay open, and you'd be able to rejoin that meeting
on another device. I think
yeah,
right.
yeah, obviously. Everybody else would just be left in limbo until you came back. So it depends how quickly you can get another device up and running, as to whether they're going to stick around and wait to see whether you come back.
Of course, guys, you could use this on a phone or an iPad. It wouldn't have to be a computer if you needed to. Okay, so Google, by its very nature, is device agnostic. That's the whole point behind it. It works on a PC, it works on a MacBook, which is what I'm using today. It works on Chromebooks. For those schools that haven't got Chromebooks yet, I cannot recommend them highly enough. Inexpensive, 2 days battery life, 30 seconds boot up and log on. But if you are using an Android device or a tablet, then all of these services are available to you, but unequivocally, these are not through the web browser because it's just not designed for it. If you're using an iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet, then there are apps for Classroom, apps for Meet, apps for Drive and Slides and Docs, etc. So for those of you who are wanting to use Google on a mobile device, you need the applications. A caveat to that is absolutely as a one-to-one device, that's brilliant. That's absolutely fantastic the way that works. But on a shared device, it has real issues because obviously if a particular user has signed on to all of the Google services with their accounts, of course, when another student uses that device, inevitably the first student is not going to have remembered to log themselves out of everything. So the second student would have access to their Google resources and files and Gmail. And of course, that is a GDPR and security nightmare. So an iPad or an Android device as a shared device is a really difficult issue. As a one-to-one, it's not an issue. But obviously, if you do go with Chromebooks, then because everybody logs onto the Chromebook on that session, it therefore eliminates all of those issues. But it absolutely does work.
On the enterprise upgrade, I guess that's what you're talking about, David. That is till the 30th of September. So those settings, just to confirm, larger meetings for up to 250 participants per call, live streaming for up to 100,000 viewers within a domain, and the ability to record meetings and save them to Google Drive. Those settings will revert back on the 30th of September. That's the date they've set at the moment. I mean, obviously everything's changing day to day. So if lockdown continues, that might be extended, but at the moment that is set to 30th of September.
Okay, to get online training for your staff, what I suggest you do is you go to the Google Teacher Center. So if you literally Google, in fact, let me just very quickly share my screen again with you. I suggest that you go to the I don't want to do that now. Yeah, if you go to the Google for Education Teacher Center, there is some really, really nice lessons going through all of kind of the core Google services. There's a couple of levels and it does actually go towards some level of certification if that's what you want to do. There's a nominal cost, I think, of about $10 per teacher. But even if they don't want to do the exam, still go to the Google Teacher Centre.
Yeah, I think it's $10 for the educator level 1. And educator level 2 is like $25, I think.
Thanks, Michael. Sharing resources with your parents. So within the admin console, it could be configured so staff can share files outside of the domain. They can make them public. So if that has been activated by the super admin in your school, then you can go to a file or a folder. You could make that available to anybody in the world with a Google link, regardless of whether they have a Google account or not. And then perhaps you could just put those resources, those links on your school website, or perhaps onto a Google site, and parents would be able to get those resources to perhaps support their students with the distance learning. So, but there is a configuration that needs to be made in the admin console to allow some or all staff to be able to share outside their domain.
Just on that, before we move on to the other one, the other thing that we've seen that schools are doing is they're setting up Google Sites to be able to surface that stuff through. So if you want parents to be able to access a single hub rather than put it onto the school website, you could link off to another website, which is a Google site that you can control, your teachers can update. As an interesting, useful way of doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great idea, Michael. Thank you. Okay, this is a really interesting question. So for those schools that, for example, are using old email, Microsoft email, but are also using Google, if they are on exactly the same domain, that's really important, so they must be on the same domain, you could get your Gmail notifications to your normal email, providing you set up an alias to make the existing email address and the Gmail address an alias of the normal email address. So what I mean by that is if your Gmail email is different to your normal school email, then obviously you won't be getting any emails. But if they're on the same domain, you could ask again your email administrator to say, I'd like you to provide an alias for my email address to also be my Gmail address. And if that is in the same domain, all of the Google emails will start routing through to your normal mailbox. So it is possible. The best way to move files from network to Google. So you could use Google Shared Drive, which is kind of a type of network drive that Google provided for you. And potentially it's no more difficult than dragging and dropping from your network onto that drive. It's just a drag and drop exercise. Now, obviously, we wouldn't advise schools just to drag and drop everything because so many of those files would be out of date. They probably need cleaning up and organizing and making sure you're just just uploading the contemporary files, the most update files. Once you've got it sorted on the network, you could literally drag and drop into the Google Shared Drive and they will be available as necessary.
Yeah, there's also tools out there that you can use, and we run a service that does this for you. So we can do that overnight, which will migrate all of your data from your server over to the Google Drive.
The video of this presentation and my slide set will be emailed to everybody following the end of this presentation, is my understanding. Michael, is that right?
That's my understanding as well. I'd be looking to Andre to update.
But yes.
My name's Andre. Just to let you know, we'll be sending out a link to a PDF to download.
Good. Right, so how can staff see the number of children and time spent on remote learning? That's a bit of a tricky one because the audit reports that you get in reporting, You can track files viewed, edited, and added by a user in the app user activity section, similar with account activity. So you can see whether people are adding or accessing files, but seeing how long they've spent looking at a file, to my knowledge from the reporting console, is difficult to track. I guess if we flip that round and try to work out, is a student really spending the time? So we're giving students work. We want to make sure that they're ingesting the information we're giving to them. You could use something like forms to check comprehension. If you're using forms for comprehension, you can see how long it takes them to fill it out. So if you think somebody is possibly swinging the lead and not putting the effort in, and they're managing to fill out a 12-question form in under a minute, you probably have an idea of whether they're really going through the resources that you're putting up there. But I don't think through the standard tools that Google have got, you can see the time spent on remote learning. How suitable is this for use in primary schools? So G Suite itself is very, very suitable for primary schools. I think if you're talking about recording sessions and doing online lessons, then you probably need to think about how you're going to do that, particularly with the lower years. School that I'm a governor at are using it really well to make sure that all the students are engaged. It's just the level at which you would do a full lesson on Google Meet, perhaps. So it is very suitable for primary schools, but it's just how you use it might shift amongst the year groups.
And I've got some schools that are using Google Classroom extremely effectively at Key Stage 2. But I would have thought Key Stage 1 would be pushing it, but absolutely for Key Stage 2. Yes, Paul, it does. Sorry, Google Shared Drive absolutely has got versioning within it. Every Google Doc always contains every version that ever existed, and you can just click onto file version history and go back to any version of a file you want, and it will tell you exactly who made the change when they made it. So yeah, absolutely, Google front and center is the versioning is astonishingly powerful.
So how can staff create virtual lessons? So this is really a question around, I suppose, when we've talked about recording sessions in this session, then obviously you've got to store those somewhere and put them onto the website. Well, actually, as part of your Google tenancy, you get access to YouTube. And if you lock that down, so you can lock it so that only anyone that is logged on via your tenancy can only see approved videos. You can also set up a channel, which would then make it possible for teachers to go live and they can record those sessions. And then you can link to the YouTube channel, which obviously if they're logged on as themselves through the school, they would be able to follow those lessons. So that's a way of doing it. It's a bit of a process to get to the point of having that all secured down, but YouTube would be my choice. And if you wanted to know more about how to get YouTube set up, then I'm happy to pick that up with you offline.
Any other questions?
No, okay. So we've unfortunately lost Jake. So I'm gonna, first time I've seen these slides, and I'm going to talk you through them. So the Microsoft webinar supporting remote teaching and learning in your school with RM and Microsoft is 10:30 tomorrow, 29th of April. I've seen a few of you have been making some comments about joining that, so I think links are being sent out to people. Webinar recording, presentation and FAQs will be available on the website later this week. We think from Andre that we will be sending things out to you as well, so you'll get a link to the PDF. If you've got any further queries, then contact us on contactus@rm.com or give us a ring on 08450 700 300. And I think that's not quite all from us. Thank you for attending today. It's been good. Thanks for all the questions and comments. It's been great to be able to take you through this stuff. So I hope you all stay safe. And thanks again.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I hope you found that useful. It's so difficult when you're just talking to your screen and I can't see anybody's faces, but certainly from the reactions on the right, it seems like that was useful for you. So I really hope it was. And have a good day, everyone.